So the question you asked right before this broke was
about Deadlands.
So I'm not really a game guy. My level of gaming is poker. That's it. And my level of video game, my level of video games like Words with Friends, that sort of thing. But Jeff Marriott, one of my writer buddies, haunted me for years to try to get me to write a novel based on the Deadlands role-playing game, and it sounded great. It's alt history, steampunk, supernatural, western. I mean, any of those combinations are things I love. So finally, I kept saying no, and I kept actually making ridiculous conditions, like only if I can put in an uncredited cameo by a sandworm from Dune. He's like, sure. Only if I can put in zombie velociraptors. Like, sure. I'm like, so I ran out of things that I thought would get him to say no, and he agreed to everything, and the company did as well. And Shane Hensley, the owner, the creator of the game. Mm-hmm. So I didn't play the game, but I watched on YouTube a bunch of people playing the game and live to it. At like a lot of conventions would have game rooms, like Dragon Con is a game room. Yeah. I would go in and sit down and watch, I'd actually bring in a couple pizzas and say, hey, I'll feed you guys, play Deadlands, let me watch. Let me ask questions. And I got a good sense of it. Plus, they gave me an enormous amount of background material. So I read all that. And I wrote a novel called Ghostwalkers that is intended to introduce people to Deadlands who are not familiar with it. And it has enough of the solid stuff from the game that people who do know the game would enjoy the book as well. That was the idea, is to find that sweet spot.
Yep.
And
as a fan of the game, I could say you do the job well.
Oh, thank you. I love doing media tie-in stuff, and that's and it's funny because I am now the president of the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers.
Wow!
Came because I apparently I never say no to things, is what it boils down to. I had a lot of fun with it. I had a great respect for it, and we are in discussions right now to do a Deadlands anthology with me editing it, and folks like Matt Forbick and Shane Hensley, the creator, and others would be writing stories for that. I'm currently editing, among the anthologies I'm editing, is a Weird West anthology. But the same company is going to put the Weird West one out, and also a little later on the Deadlands specific one out. So it's going to be fun. I may or may not write a story that's a sequel to my novel. Editors of anthologies generally do not like to write stories for their own anthologies. Sometimes the publisher makes it a requirement. Mm-hmm. Like when I was editing the Aliens anthology, Aliens Bug Hunt, and the Aliens versus Predator anthology, Fox and Titan both required that I write a story for it. So, okay, but if I don't have a contractual obligation, I won't. But Deadlands might be one where I think I might anyway, because I love those characters. I really love the two characters I created for that, and I had a lot of fun writing the story. And then we brought in Shauna McGuire and then Jeffrey Marriott to write the next two books. So there's a possibility of more Deadlands novels for sure, and maybe some more Deadlands comics. It's a great world, though. It's a really fantastic fantasy world, and I love old history. I love the West, especially the Weird West. I love supernatural, and I love steampunk. So I was in a happy place writing that book.
I'd never even heard of steampunk when I first picked up Deadlands years and years ago, and I was like, I love this. Weird West, monsters, ghosts, magic. It's like, this is my jam.
Yeah, it's got everything, and it the way Shane created it, everybody who plays it has the opportunity to expand on the world because it leaves opportunities for an enormous amount of storytelling. And watching some of the gameplay, it's like, why are you guys, the people running the games, why are you guys not writing novels? You're coming up with extraordinary plots for people to play. So, I was very impressed, and I'm impressed with the game. Now, weirdly, there's a V-Wars board game, which I have a stack of on my shelf. I'll tilt my thing up. You can't see them from here. Okay. I have lost every time I've played that game. Every single time. The guy who did the rules, Rob Davio, who's an award-winning game. He did the Star Wars game and Lord of the Rings game. Like, I think Lord of the Rings Risk and variations like that. Oh, wow. Incredible game designer. I get crushed every time I play the game. My wife thinks it's charming and endearing. I do not.
I think it's funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's funny. It's embarrassing. My son kicked my ass in the game. And
Well,
I was trying to
I
teach
want
him
to try
the game.
this.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it reminds me, like, if you ever see actors from the Star Trek series trying to do Star Trek trivia
Oh,
content. Oh, it's always hilarious. They know nothing about
Yeah.
like the shows that they were on.
yeah, I've got a
Like,
couple.
they don't remember anything.
I have a couple of friends who are from Next Generation. Friends with Brent Spiner and Will Wheaton.
Oh
Will-
God,
wow.
one of my favorites.
Will actually read one of the V Wars stories for one of the first V Wars audiobook. He
Yeah,
read one of the
I
stories.
remember him posting about that.
And,
I follow him
Brent-
on Facebook.
And Brent and I just kind of fell into connection. Oh, I know how that happened. My editor asked me if I would read and potentially cover quote Brent's first book. And it was kind of a fake autobiographical comedy mystery. It's really awesome. And so I
didn't even
read
know
it.
he
I
wrote
love it. Yeah, I've got it on my shelf over
Oh
there.
my God,
Um,
I need to
and-
find that.
it was so great. And then Brent and I start talking, and he's a hell of a nice guy, you know.
Yeah.
And it is one of the weird side effects of what I do for a living. Actually, it's two parts of it. One, I never expected to actually get to know the writers whose books I had always read and admired. But I know Stephen King, I know Michael Moorcock, I know Robert McCammon, I knew Peter Straub before he died, Joe Lansdale. These are all folks I know now, and it is not the surreal feeling of that has not worn off. Part of me that's a book nerd is still like, holy fuck. I became really close friends with George Romero. You know, we actually did a book together.
Wow.
We did an anthology called somewhere over there. Oh, here it is. Grab it real quick. We did an anthology called Knights of the Living Dead, where we actually got a bunch of our friends who write zombie stuff. Brian Keene, Craig Engler, David Scow, David Wellington, Jay Bonansinga, Joe Lansdale, John Russo, you know, all writing stories for us set in the 48 hours around Night of the Living Dead.
Oh wow.
I became friends with Stan Lee, which again I never expected. So that part of it was surreal, but then I realized that in the writing world, you know, we're all going to be on panels together, we're all going to be in events together, and we just, you know, we understand each other because this is what we do. The other part of it, and it's partly because of V Wars and partly because of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, that I actually get to know a lot of celebrities. You know, like sometimes it's there, you know, somebody I'm working with, or sometimes we're on panels, we're in events together. Sometimes they just reach out and start conversations with me because most actors are looking for work and they know I have a
Fair
bunch
enough.
of development and they want to see if, you know, there's anything going on. Charisma Carpenter a couple weeks ago reached out, you know, so now we're chatting, you know, and she's reading one of my books, so it's cool.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
No, it's not to that extent yet. Hopefully someday. But like to some extent with doing the show for writers and back in the day doing radio, it's kind of the same thing. There is a certain advantage to walking up to people at a convention and going, "Hi, my name is Kevin Mears. I'm a demonologist." It's not something normal people hear day in and a day out.
True.
And yeah, when I try to email people to get guests for the show, half the time that's my first. Even when I'm dealing with people I know are skeptics, that's my first line because I know they haven't heard it 100 times before.
Yeah. So I have mentioned very briefly the Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Right? For context on that, just to explain what that's all about. Back in 2009 and 10, I was the writer on the Black Panther comic. I was the only white writer in a run of black writers before and after. Partly because I had grown up in a very racist neighborhood, very racist household, and it was the actual presence of the Black Panther in the old Fantastic Four comics that opened my eyes up to the realities of racism. And I did reading and found out, and that kind of split me off from, say, my father, who was extremely racist. Roll forward, Reggie Hudlin, who was writing the book at the time, knew that story, you know, had heard me talk about it in interviews. So when he was going to step down, he you know, I had been doing some work with his last 6 issues anyway. I was writing all the dialogue for Shuri and so on. So he talked to them and said, "Hey, you should get Maberry to write the comic," and I did. So during my run of the comic, I wrote the first stories where Shuri was the Panther. I worked with an artist, Ken Lashley was my artist, to create the armor that she wears. I put her up against Namor in my comics. So that whole thing of Shooter's Namor is out of my comic at issue 11 of Black Panther. And even, I don't know if you've seen the movie yet, but
I enjoyed it.
Very good.
The way in which she resolves that fight with Namor at the end is out of my comic. So it's really surreal. So I got invited to the Hollywood premiere. My name's in the credits in the thank you box. And I went out there with my son to the premiere, and it was surreal because here are all these actors, that I know and love from different things right there, plus all celebrity friends of theirs. Like Rihanna was there, and at the after party at the Roosevelt, I look over here, there's Damon John from Shark Tank. Look over there, it's Boy George. It's like, I mean, the strangest collection of celebrities, and we're all partying together. There's no part of that is not feeling like I'm in a coma somewhere and imagining it. But if that's the case and somebody wakes me up, I'm gonna freaking kill them. This is too much fun.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I'm a little jealous, I'll be honest.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is that once you get into this world and publish and do more stuff, this becomes part of your world. So you guys are a lot younger than I was when I published my first novel. So
well, I actually know I'm now older than you were when you published your first novel.
How old are you?
I'm 46. So
I'm
just
48 now.
Okay, you're just 48. All right. So you're in the same zone I was when I started.
Yeah.
So that matters. All of this is recent, fairly recent, and it's wonderfully surreal. And I'm glad, on a personal level, that I don't take it for granted, because that would make it suck. I like the fact that I'm still able to be a kid comic book nerd, pop culture nerd, and do it professionally.
Yeah.
That's fun. There's no part of that.
It's really cool. And it's great, honestly, for somebody like me to see somebody like you actually succeed because of that reason.
Before my first book, was published, I was, bills up to the eyeballs and debt and everything else, and didn't really see a way out of it. And then, wrote the book. Didn't expect to write a book, by the way, a novel. I'd actually done one folklore book under a pen name. The Vampire Slayer's Field Guide to the Undead, written by Shane MacDougall. I had just done a bunch of martial arts books for a publisher in Pennsylvania, and there was one undecided book in our contract, and instead of doing another martial arts book, I wanted to do a book that I thought my grandmother would have added to her library where she's still alive. There's a book about vampires and other monsters around the world and throughout history.
I think I may have a copy of that on my tablet.
Yeah, it's about
That's familiar.
Big old monster of a book. But he wanted me to put the book out under a pen name because he was afraid my martial arts readers would think I'd, had some sort of neurological incident. So we did Shane MacDougall, and the book outsold my martial arts books. It got me on the radar of the horror community, and it got me interested in looking for fiction that used folkloric monsters. And in the early 2000s, there weren't very many of them. So I decided to try my hand at fiction to see if I would enjoy it. I really didn't think so, because I'd always wanted to be a nonfiction guy.
Mm-hmm.
Tried it to see if I liked it, and that book came out in 2006, and I am writing my 48th novel now. So apparently I fell in love with it. And
it's funny for me, because I'm on the other end of that. Of growing up, I always saw myself as a fiction writer, and now my obsession is this nonfiction book about Salem.
Well, you can do the nonfiction book and do a novel,
I'll probably wind up writing novels down the line, but right now, today is officially the first day of me going back to college after 20 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Talking about it. But it's like the amount of research I want to do, because I want to do this book on Salem properly. So it's reading not just trial records, but reading what all people at the time had to say about it, what people in the Middle Ages thought about, what all the stuff that influenced this, to come up with a unique, what hopefully will be a new take.
Yeah.
And finding these patterns. And it's like, I still have probably another year at least of research before I even start writing the bloody thing, let alone starting to write fiction. I have a question from the chat, though.
Yeah.
Any advice for severe self-loathing while creating, like writing and drawing?
Severe self-loathing. Well, that means you're creative. I mean, I know very few writers and artists, and I'm a writer. I'm a professional writer. I'm an amateur artist who is not the harshest critic of my own work. I mean, most writers do that. They put themselves down. They have imposter syndrome is a big thing, and it never quite goes away. I mean, I've been on panels. I was on a panel with Jim Butcher, Brandon Sanderson, Kevin J. Anderson, AJ Hartley, and Charlene Harris on the imposter syndrome.
Wow. Just the writing chops.
Right. And we're all talking about how the fact that every book we do, there's some point at which we think, well, this is the one that's going to show everyone that I'm really just been faking it all along, and this is going to tank my career. My buddy James Rollins, one of the top thriller writers in the world. I mean, every book debuts at number one in paperback, hardback, audio, and ebook. Every book, right? Halfway through each book, I'll get a call from him or an email from him saying, "This is it. I have no more ideas. I'm regurgitating stuff. It's crap, and we have to talk him down. A couple of friends have to talk him down from the ledge, so to speak." Book comes out, number one bestseller. Critics can't get enough of it. Sells a million copies. David Morrell, creator of Rambo, if you ever read the original book, First Blood, a nuanced American tragedy, the very first novel ever written about PTSD.
Yeah.
He does not survive the book.
I read that part once at least.
Yeah, it was a brilliant novel, and has written so many brilliant things since then. Same thing, self-doubt all the time. But that's who we are. So the self-loathing thing, you can be aware of it, but you should not be a slave to it. Yes, okay. I don't like what I write. Okay, so I'll fix it in a rewrite. I feel that I had one advantage in that I didn't take creative writing classes in college. I went to Temple University School of Journalism. I learned to write, and I had a professor who was all about the newspaper motto: write it quick and dirty, fix it and rewrite, move on. And that's kind of how I approach things. Granted, it took, my first novel took me 5 years and 18 revisions. And yet, that taught me, we learn about writing by writing. We learn how to write a novel by writing novels. Sometimes you learn it in one novel. Sometimes it takes you 10 novels before you write it. I have top professional, like top 5 bestseller list friends who have half a dozen novels, either in their hard drive or in a closet. They'll never let anyone see because they're crap. But because they wrote those novels and they were crap, and they knew they were crap, they were able to write the best one less crappy. And then eventually they got to the point where they got sold, and it may have been a long haul, and now they could publish their laundry list and hit the bestseller list. That's kind of how it works. The self-loathing never completely goes away, but you can learn to put a leash on it and say, I can fix anything in the rewrite. There's nothing, there's no manuscript so bad that it cannot be fixed in a rewrite. Even if that rewrite is 10 passes, you can always fix it. And part of that, if you don't know how to fix it, that means you don't know that particular skill. Take a writing class on that skill.
Makes sense.
Since I had never taken creative writing classes, one of the things I did to teach myself is I took my 6 favorite novels in the genre I was writing, which was American Gothic, small town horror.
Mm-hmm.
It was Salem's Lot with Stephen King.
Great book.
Ghost Story by Peter Straub. They Bite by Robert McCammon, and a few other books.
That's a good one.
Charlie Jackson. I read them as a reader and then reread them multiple times as a writer. They became my textbooks. I used Writer's Digest and other things to identify what individual elements of style were, like what is passive voice? What is this? What is that? And then went looking for those things in the books of people who had done it successfully. Not to copy, but to learn how they used that particular tool from their toolbox. How, for example, the difference in the way that Shirley Jackson built a scene of suspense and built to a reveal is completely different than the way Stephen King does it and the way Peter Straub did it. And yet, there are certain structural similarities to it that if you pay attention to it, you can learn from and then say, okay, well, I'm going to do it. I'll take that and do it my way. But you can't manipulate those skill sets unless you know what they are. And we may be born as storytellers, we're not born with the knowledge of all these individual elements of skill. We have to acquire them. Yep. Stephen King, to this day, talks about new things he's learning about writing. He could skate for the rest of his career without adding anything new to his craft toolbox, but it's not what a writer does. A writer always wants to get better, always wants to improve. And you hear that from him, guys like Chuck Wendig, my friend Shauna McGuire, who's a brilliant writer, Josh Malaman, Bird Box, he's always trying to get better. That's what we do. And there are books that, we've put out, or stories we've put out that we look back on and cringe. Okay, but that was then. That was the best writer you were then. Who are you now as your writer? Who will you be tomorrow? It's cultivating the optimism to believe that you will continue to get better if you apply effort into learning the skills that make you a better writer, the craft of it. And so you can't just rely on the natural storytelling gift. It's not enough. It's 1/3 of it. The rest is skills, and the rest, beyond that is understanding the objectivity that comes with good revision strategies.
That's really good advice, and thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, writers should take themselves off the hook. Nobody was born with that gift. I read Stephen King's first draft of Carrie. Oh my God, was it awful. Every teenage girl sounded like a 20-something Maine white male. They all sounded like Stephen King. There was no telekinesis in it. The dialogue was beyond wooden, and he had this argument with his wife, Tabby. She kept taking it out of the trash can every time he threw it in.
Yeah.
And he said, what? She said, what do you think is wrong with this damn thing? He said, wrong? I can make a list of 200 things wrong with that. And she said, oh, really? Bullshit. He said, I'll do it. And just to piss her off, he made a list of 200 things. And then he gave her the list and said, there. And she said, great, you have a to-do list. There. As Steve told me, he has never won one of those arguments with his wife.
I'm a giant Stephen King fan. Of the people that you've mentioned, I'll be completely honest. King and Butcher are the two people would most love to get on the show. And they're kind of busy.
Two of my favorite authors.
King would probably be. I don't think there's a chance in hell getting King. I can talk to Jim though. I can talk to Jim Butcher about it though.
I would be deeply grateful.
Yeah, we're both on the board of a writers' conference, and we're going to be seeing each other in 3 weeks.
Yeah, Kevin and I are both huge Jim Butcher fans.
And he's a hell of a nice guy, too.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of his interviews on YouTube, and he seems like a great guy.
Very chilled, really down to earth, very funny.
Yeah.
And also a big D&D nerd. I mean, huge.
I'm aware.
As is Vin Diesel, by the way.
Yeah.
I knew that as well. It's more common in my experience, it's more common among writers and actors than people might think. When you think about it, it makes sense. Because like you said, all role-playing games, when they're done properly, are storytelling.
Yeah, they're at least a novella of some are actual novels depending on like the gameplay. I'm impressed. I was at ZenKaiCon in Lancaster a few times as a guest, and just seeing the people and their love of gaming and how they get it and what it means to each of them. Some it's just recreational, some it's therapy. I mean, there's actually a pretty good component of people on the various stages of the autism spectrum who, by embodying cosplay and game characters, become more able to interact and are therefore much happier.
I've seen it.
Yeah, and that's so cool. I mean, that exists to give them that, and there's such a sense of joy that comes out of it that, oh my God, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I'll tell you a confession with my writing. Almost all of my characters in my novels started out as role-playing characters in a game that I either ran or played that character in someone else's game, and I would take elements of the stories or things that happened or things that I wanted to happen to that character, and I would use that to create the books that I put them in.
And there's that whole genre of lit RPG. There's so many people I know who write lit RPG, which is, essentially taking what they're doing in role playing and writing books and making money off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a huge thing lately. I was going to say, You're right about the autism, because I've had several friends over the years that are autistic in various places on the spectrum. Every single one I've ever known has either was a gamer, or with one exception, she wasn't a gamer when I met her. I brought her into the hobby,
Nice.
and I
And a
think
lot
it's
of
very
them,
healthy for them.
yeah, a lot of them are cosplayers too,
Yes.
because they can more comfortably interact as the character than as themselves.
Yeah.
By interacting in character, it helps them refine their own interactive, interpersonal skills, and it's fantastic. And I love cosplay. I don't cosplay myself, but I love cosplaying. I have been cosplayed, which is weird. I've had people show up because I wear Hawaiian shirts all the time. I've got hundreds of them, and I have people show up in Hawaiian shirts. I had this little French woman writer showed up wearing a V Wars ball cap. She had a fake beard, white beard, a Hawaiian shirt, a puff of white chest hair. She's about 100 pounds. She's
That's
tall.
absolutely brilliant.
Oh my god! And I don't know how many times people have said, that they found me because someone said, look for the really big guy in the Hawaiian shirt with a white beard. I'm 6'4", so so they go look for me. And I have friends who have been accused of cosplaying simply because they have white or gray beards and wear Hawaiian shirts. They've been accused of cosplaying, which is hilarious. But I also love, and I think it's so crazy when people cosplay my characters. That is deeply. I've never taken acid, but I'm pretty sure that's what it would feel like. I have people coming up as my characters, and I'm like, am I having a stroke? Do I smell burnt toast? And it's great. It's just so great. But then you have people like Jim Butcher who will show up as Snape or Wolverine at a panel. We'll be in a panel, and in fact, there's a couple of photos of me in Comic-Con next to Jim. He's got the sideburns, the claws, the white T-shirt, and he's got some guns, and he's so basically I'm doing a panel with Wolverine,
Why not?
Awesome,
No, I love cosplay as well, although I've never quite gotten into it. I keep meaning to, but so many hobbies, so little time. And plus, whenever I go to conventions, I haven't done a convention in a while, sadly, because the ones I usually went to have collapsed.
Yeah.
But I'd usually be doing 3 or 4 panels, a magic act, and whatever other crazy thing I convinced them to let me do this time around. But
Yeah, that's how Kevin and me met. Actually, was we were both doing panels,
the same panel essentially
at a convention.
Which con?
Oh God, what was it? Was it Dark Side?
Make It Fair or Steampunk? I can't remember. Or Dark Side, one of the 3.
I think it was Dark Side of the Con.
Oh, okay. I've been to that one, but I love cons. Dragon Con is still my favorite.
My fiance has been begging me to go, and I would love to go, but Pennsylvania, Georgia, money.
Yeah, here. I tell you, if you guys ever get out to San Diego for San Diego Comic-Con, I can get you 4-day pro badges. So,
wow.
You're on your own for transport and hotel, but I can get you pro badges.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be the problem is getting out to San Diego.
Yeah, and it's beautiful out, God.
Oh yeah.
I'm at the beach
outside of Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm at the beach every day at dawn these days, and it's fantastic. But there are others. I'm going to be doing one in North Carolina called Saga, which is it's one of the cons that focuses on the business side of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And, in fact, the next con I'll be at, the first one of this year, will be Superstars, where Jim Butcher, Brandon Sanderson, Kevin Anderson, a bunch of others will all be teaching there. And it's just the business of writing. And it's really great. Kevin Anderson started it with a bunch of his friends, and it's fantastic. But it's all the business of writing. There's also if you're an indie writer, there's 20 books to 50K in Vegas every November. It's fantastic. What are some of the other ones I like? I think this year I'll be doing New York Comic Con because we're going to be making a big announcement associated with Weird Tales, and I'm pretty sure we're all doing that in October. But I love cons. I go to a bunch of them. Pensacon in Pensacola I'll be doing this year, and I don't know, a bunch. And they're good because you meet like-minded people, you meet fans, you see the author experience and the fan experience, And in certain cons, they don't keep the guests and the conferees separate. Like Dragon Con, everyone just we're all nerds. It's a fan run convention.
Yeah.
Comic-Con, it's very corporate, so they keep the celebrities separate from the fans, which I don't like as much. I want to swim with my
more fun
fellow
to hang out.
nerds. It is. It really is. Some of the best conversations I have are with, you're just hanging out somewhere. And that's one of the reasons I love Dragon Con, because the Westin, it's set over 5 hotels, all within real quick walking distance. But the Westin Hotel, every night, is where all the writers hang out after the day of panels. And I usually do about between 15 and 20 panels at Dragon Con over the Labor Day weekend. So you really want to crash a little bit with your buddies, talk shop, gossip, perhaps have an adult beverage or two, and just basically enjoy being with other writers, with people. It doesn't matter whether they're indie or traditional, doesn't matter whether beginners or top pros. We're all the same, and we get it. So we can just be amongst our kind, and that's fun.
I absolutely loathe doing what I'm about to do, but out of respect for you, I'm going to do it. You had another half hour, and we've come up. You're welcome as long as you would.
I got about 10 more minutes. We're having too much fun here. Another 10 minutes.
All right. Well,
by all means, I'm not trying to cut you short. I just want to respect your time.
Yeah, we should ask you though. Do you have anything that you would like to plug or promote while you're here?
Well, actually, I just had a book release last week
to our 5 viewers.
Well, it'll be up on YouTube, and I'll put the link up there so people can go watch it. But my latest book is Son of the Poison Rose. I decided to give a swing at epic fantasy, having never written any before. So the first was Kagan the Dam, then Son of the Poison Rose. It is a very thick book. And I'm writing I'm actually writing 2 books at the same time right now, experimenting to see if that will work. One of the 2 is the 3rd book in this trilogy. I had a tremendous amount of fun with this, and had, of all people, Michael Moorcock give me a cover quote for the first book in the series, and that was
wow
as hell, because he's one of my all-time favorite writers. So yeah, that was cool. But I
talk about people defying modern fantasy as well, for that matter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, his Elric novels, the Quorum and the Hawkmoon, all the other stuff. But epic fantasy is a new genre, but I've always read the genre. It's just new for me to write. And as a writer, I always love trying new things. That's how I got into comic books. Marvel Comics asked me if I wanted to write comics. I'd never done it before, so I had to say yes. My agent wanted me to write YA, and I had never done YA before, so I said yes. And I do that. When something comes along that's out of my comfort zone, that's immediately the next thing I want to try. Because I don't know how to do it. I've got to figure it out. I've got to learn new stuff. And I know I'm going to have some fun, so go in there and have fun.
I think that's a good rule of life, actually. Is roll with, if you can, unless there's a really good reason not to, just kind of roll with it. You never know what you'll find.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but there used to be a weather guy in Philadelphia on the news named Jim O'Brien.
Yes.
And
the name's familiar.
And he died skydiving, but he's the guy that got me into skydiving. I was we're at a party, and he happened to be there, and my girlfriend and I were like, "Oh my God, that's Jim O'Brien." So we started talking to him, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm going skydiving tomorrow. You guys into skydiving?" And my girlfriend kicked me, and I said yes. So we went skydiving next day, and then we went skydiving for the next 15 years. I say yes to a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's it doesn't turn out to be the best thing, but you don't know that until you try it. My favorite.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say my favorite thing I said yes to that turned out to be really cool. I had an editor buddy of mine reach out to me and say, "Look, I'm doing an anthology of Wizard of Oz stories." Now, this is before I had written anything for kids. I'm writing horror stuff. He says, "Would you be interested in writing a Wizard of Oz story?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then I had to think of what the hell I was going to write. My first inclination was to write a story where the Tin Man gets the heart of a serial killer and goes on a rampage, because that sounded cool. And it would be fun to write. It would be fun to write, but it wasn't really right for the kids who read Wizard of Oz. Let's face it.
Not really, no.
So I reread the books, a few of the books, and I got into it. and I wrote a story about a little winged monkey girl whose wings were too small for her to fly, and she goes looking for magic traveling shoes that would take her to all the places her wings wouldn't. And even as I'm writing, I'm like, because it's so far out of my comfort zone. That story made it to the anthology, and it was mentioned in a number of reviews. And then I got a letter from the estate of L. Frank Baum, the guy who created The Wizard of Oz, wrote the first 20-some books. Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to fry me for, having the audacity to tell a story, And what they said was, we love the story so much, and we think it's so honors the original story that, we have decided to add it to the official chronology of Oz. It is now and will forever be a prequel to The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, wow.
Buckets when that happened. I mean, that was completely surreal.
What greater? That's a huge honor.
That's amazing.
But the thing is, it would never have happened if I had said, I don't do that sort of thing, or that's not, or I can't. A long time ago, one of the two writers I met, it's a little long story to explain how, but Ray Bradbury, I mentioned I knew him. Richard Matheson was the other guy. And Matheson, one of the things he told me is never let yourself be pigeonholed and never say no. Try it. If you don't like it, you can always say not again, or but
at least tried it.
Yeah, you shouldn't say no as a reflex just because you don't know how in that moment. Well, an airline pilot doesn't know how to fly a plane when he decides he wants to be an airline pilot. You learn,
but you learn,
and every time you learn something, you now have a wider range of things you can do. So
the entire reason we're here, going all the way back to the beginning, is that kind of story.
Yeah.
Because I was hanging out with Lou Gentili one night before he did the Lou Gentili show, which he did out of his home. We're just hanging out in his house. And I'm getting ready to leave because he's about to start the show. And he just looks at me and goes, "Why don't you stick around, do the show with me? Let's see what happens." Like, yeah, why not? And we go down into the basement. We start what's supposed to be a 2-hour show. 6 hours later, that's how I became his co-host.
And that's how it happens. Like-minded people find that together they actually have a broader range than they do individually.
Exactly.
Synergistic, or Gestalten, I guess it is. And it also makes you feel less like a weirdo. I mean, there are a lot of things that I'm into in terms of the things I read and enjoy that if I just relied on the people in my immediate family, I would be, as I was growing up, the weird one. But then I find that there are so many people who like what I like, but from a different perspective. So I get to see their viewpoint, get to see it through their eyes, and then it expands outward. Then you find you have a community. And writing is like that. So, whoever posted that question, if you have any self-loathing, we all do. But at the same time, it's such a joyful and marvelous thing to do something that you love and know that there's always the opportunity to get better at it, to be more successful at it. Even if you've had 1,000 rejections, 1,001st could be, what happened. Stephen King had a whole stack of rejections for Carrie until he didn't, and that's what happens. So I would say,
driving trucks, boy, you'll never make it as a singer.
Yeah.
Somebody told a musician told that to Elvis when he tried out for his band.
Yeah, and there are a lot of stories like that. People who they shouldn't have been a success because so many people were trying to talk them out of it, or they know that everyone they know is better than them. Well, so what? So what if somebody's better than you? I know people who are substantially better than me as a writer. I don't care. It just shows that there's enough room in this business for all kinds of writers.
Yeah.
Because the more writers that are out there, the more readers will be attracted to it. It's not a competition. It's a playground. There's enough toys there. Everybody can come in and play. The writers that I like the best are the ones who, tell other writers, not to fear if somebody else has a similar idea. That shows that the idea has real growth potential. I mean, look at zombies for a second. It's one of the genres I write in. George Romero did a zombie movie, and then everyone else did zombie movies. John Skip and Craig Spector did the very first collection of zombie fiction, and now there's thousands upon thousands of books in that genre, and every time it starts to cool off, you'll get a World War Z or Girl with All the Gifts or Train to Busan or something that, or The Last of Us, or something that reinvigorates the genre. So if you don't think that your stuff fits, it may be that the genre needs to expand to allow you. And if you write with your whole heart, you'll probably do that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the saying I've seen in a million books about how to sell a book or how to write a book. You don't want, it's not actually not a good idea to, and I was just telling this to an Uber driver who was telling me if anyone wants to write a book. One of the worst things you can say, I've been told when you try to sell a book, is it's unique. Because if nobody's ever done it before, there may be a reason. So it's not a bad thing when your book is like other people's books.
Yeah,
it means there's a market for it.
Yeah, and if it's unique, then that just means you need a better pitch.
Yeah.
I did 2 novels, Glimpse and Ink, that were not your standard vampire novels by any stretch. One was a vampire who fed on the very last little bit of hope left in people. So he would drive them to that edge and just feed on the hope. Glimpse, it was called.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Another one I did, Ink, where this a type of vampire again. If you had a tattoo that you got because it was attached to a really important memory, something critical to you, he would, if he touched it, the tattoo would gradually fade from you, it would appear on his skin, and he would feed on the memories, and you would lose those memories forever. So, like one woman has a tattoo of her murdered child, and day by day she's forgetting that her child existed. So another type of vampire story. Well, people said, well, those are too weird to write, to publish, because they just don't. They're not. If people want to go for a vampire, they're expecting fangs. That's not all what vampires are. So I wrote 2 vampire books that the word vampire doesn't even appear in the books, but they're still vampire books, and they both did pretty well.
And a phenomenal concept. I mean, it's like that. Yeah. I want to read those. I'll put it that simple.
Glimpse and Ink are both out there, both audio as well. And
I've got Audible credits.
Yeah, well, Ray Porter reads Ink, and it's one of my, I think, maybe the best thing I've written. And I think Emma Galvin, read Glimpse, and she does a marvelous job on that. So
fantastic.
Yeah. Now, guys, actually
be checking those out.
Yeah, and I hope you do. I hope you enjoy them. And I actually do have to buzz out now because I've got something.
No, by all means.
So this has been fun. I could go on with you guys for a couple of hours. You guys are a hoot.
Thank you. You've been an absolute pleasure as a guest.
And hopefully I'll be back here, and I'd love to run with you guys in person someday. Sit down, have coffee or something.
Yeah, you come out to the East Coast, let us know, and I'll be happy to go out to coffee or take you out to eat or something like that.
Well, most likely I'll be at New York Comic Con in October. So if I'm going to be up there, I'll probably come down to the Philly area. It's not that far. Well, both of them are pretty easy to Trenton to see friends and family. So I'll be if I go to New York for Comic Con, I'll probably stay in the area for about a week or two. So
we can definitely figure something out. If we have cars, we can come to you or meet somewhere or figure something out.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So for the record, send like a message on Facebook.
Sure.
As I've said to almost all of our other guests, you always are welcome back on the show. I'll send you a Facebook request.
Please.
But if you want to come on, you tell me when. I will be happy to have you.
Well, I've got 3 big books coming out this year. So, I've got a weird science, slightly supernatural thriller. I've got a deep space science fiction adventure, and I've got a book of short stories set in Eastern Pennsylvania, horror stories set in Eastern Pennsylvania. So, could be fun.
Home stomping grounds is Eastern PA. I grew up in New Hope.
Oh, actually, New Hope is the basis for this. The town is called Pine Deep, but it's based on New Hope and a little bit of Upper Black Eddy. Same town as my first 3 novels, the Ghost Road Blues Trilogy.
I'll look into that, but let me let you go.
Yeah, I got to run.
You sucked in.
This is fun, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for everybody who's watching, and I'll see you guys all around the weird little playground that we romp in. So,
thank you. Have a good night.
All right, take care, guys.
Take care. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Johnathan Maberry, fantastic author and a very good guy. I'm extremely pleased he was kind enough to join us for tonight. We'll have him on again, no question about it. That's going to wrap things up for tonight. This is Kevin Mears saying good night and God bless. Brian?
Keep your fangs sharp.
Remember, if you enjoy what we're doing, like, comment, and subscribe. Also, go check out Dicing with Dragons, my new channel where I'm running the game Blades in the Dark. It's no longer Dragonlance because of the nonsense going on with TSR. It's a lot of fun. It's a really cool game. Check it out. Until next time, good night and God bless. Let me hit the end stream. There we go. There we go. Done.